it as a demonstration of your outreach, then Hootsuite's the way to go. It's about the trade how it goes.
Two balls.
Such a larger
Just
plug it in. And we're just there, I mean, yes, there's only so much time in exposure. But come on!
I'm gonna work
My legs are.
So this one today, and then I'm gonna switch to mommy. Just try it. Get it? Like all wrapped up.
No, I think she said, I don't know. It's
It sounds very clear.
I want to do it. Do you want me just to make it
Sit with you. Do you have a spot on?
I just take it off.
All the things.
Well, I'll follow you now.
For those participants online, we'll get started in 5 minutes.
It doesn't look as bad as it is.
Yeah.
When you go into the classrooms and it has not, you can't tell, but the covers, who knows? So what happened was it blew out of the one grade, so the sixth grade that was in, not Mince's, right? And then there in Mince's, there when it's and also under the wall. And that's where it stayed.
How are you doing?
Then it went through.
And then
So it's those 10
It's a legit operation down here, man. They've got all the stuff, you know.
my daughter.
Eyes are on us at all times.
So it's
It doesn't happen often.
finish the school year, then finish, and then that's the initial plan.
It can be. It's been so wet, so the soils have been really hard to, plant. So we have it's crazy. How are you?
So to get ready for the garden space.
It's bad. But it's also just been, like they're wearing sloggers out instead of, like shoes because of the furrows just collapsed back.
We'll be okay. That's why I wanted to be here.
Like yesterday, we had some little basils, rows that just got hammered by the nails. They're gone. Yeah, it's like that's life in nature, right? It's tough out there. Especially for the little ones. So I'm mostly doing environmental work with all this stuff I found. So I'm Droplet, so we all live downstream. So I'm doing public information outreach on track for the Salt Lake County Flood Control, and they have under that and Stormwater Coalition. So pushing on all those things. I'm doing that for about a year, and then working specifically to deliver systems to mental health in South Lake, and helping them go back on a couple of grants, ones that I've done in the past. Pushing forward, especially when we still have the Trinity City Council. So hopefully this next election, I know it's sure have been amazing in helping me talk.
So what's going to happen at noon?
So that they have our language there.
Yeah.
So that when and having city council get friendlier to doing picking up market tab work. So that will lead us off some of the
Yeah, that's a smart move.
and then working with Mill Creek. They've had some fits and starts, but now it feels like they're really flowing. And interestingly enough, Catherine Zahara from United Way really provided Ashley with a process that I think she true for her. So she's able to say now that's what it's well, and like, on to the no, that's not it. So, it's good. Yeah, it's so nice to see you. Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to talk today. We're going to get started with the meeting today. So just as a few reminders, I'm Camille Sheik. I'm with the Utah State Board of Education. I oversee the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant, and I provide some support for other state after-school grants. But we're here to talk about this specific federal grant today. So some reminders. The bathrooms are not available on this floor or the main level. You'll have to take the elevators and go up to level 2. We have construction going on to make us some beautiful bathrooms. They're coming soon, but you will have to go to level 2 for now. There are some, there's a break room if you need some kind of caffeine or a snack in between. We have the 21st Century Evaluation Focus Group following this meeting, so there's options there. And I think those are all my reminders. So here's my contact information if you have any questions or concerns. The purpose of this meeting, we're not going to be doing bidding, but we're going to talk about the application for the 2019-2020 school year. There's been a lot of discussion about this grant at the federal level. The funding's been threatened for a few years now, but we do have a budget. We have our budget approved and confirmed for the school year 2019-2020. So that has been approved. I just want to do a couple introductions before we get started. So I'll have my colleague Robert introduce himself. I think the speakers will pick it.
Hi everyone, I'm Robert Palmer. I work with Camille Sheik at Utah State Board of Education. Happy to be here today.
Thanks. Renee, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Renee Medina. I'm their secretary.
Thank you. And just another quick reminder, we do have people online with us, so they might be asking questions throughout, and also you might be on camera, so just being mindful of that and aware that you might be on camera, and this is being recorded. So jumping into the 21st Century Grant, this is a federal grant, and the focus is funded under Elementary Secondary Act. So Title 4B is how we refer to it. And it's for community-based organizations, school districts, faith-based organizations who are serving students who attend schools with at least 40% or more poverty levels outside of school hours. So this can include before school, after school, summer, but you have to be at that 40%. We have limited funding, and this is really targeted to serve those students and families. So the three main focus areas are providing academic enrichment. We want these after-school programs, and when I say after school, I'm referring to before school, after school, summer, anything that's happening outside of the regular school day to really align with the school day and support and supplement what they're learning in the school day, but we're not going to do an additional 2 hours of, targeted tutoring because no one wants to go to that, but have these academic enrichment activities. So offering them activities that complement and reinforce what's learned during the school day, while also doing some maybe recreation, prevention, things like that, and then also offering parents of those students some activities around literacy and other related educational opportunities. So keep those in mind as you're going through the grant. You do have, and some of you might have it in your packet, or it might have been handed to you as you were coming in. You do have our state indicators. So please be sure to look at these as you're writing your grant. These encompass what, as the state of Utah, our focus areas are. So taking the federal focus areas and then having these state indicators and performance outcomes. So please refer to that as you're writing your grant. Keep those in mind. They align with these federal focus areas. So our competition, I apologize, the competition for 2019-2020. Applicants commit to a 5-year grant cycle. This is the funding available for this year. We have had a slight decrease in our overall funding amount due to our state as a whole is doing very well. But of course, we know there's pockets where students and families need support. But overall, our state is doing well. So this is based on census data, and we've had a slight decrease in our overall awards. So the funding is for the 2019-2020 school year. All of the proposed sites must be at that 40% or more poverty level, and we have to have documentation. And as we get into talking about the application, we're going to go over what documentation can be submitted. Because the documentation for community-based sites versus a school-based site might look a little different. So we'll talk about that documentation. The minimum amount for an application is $100,000, maximum is $500,000. Each organization, each entity can submit one new application and one reapplication. And we'll go over what those are exactly in just a bit. And no more than 7 program sites can be included in one application. So this is what the grant cycle looks like. You have that 5 years, a minimum of $100,000, maximum of $500,000 a year. So we do have the reduction built in. You have a 25% reduction, so you get 25 or 75% of your annual award amount in year 4. So that's a 25% reduction. And then in year 5, it reduces to a 50% reduction. But you have to commit to maintaining that level of service even throughout those years of reduction. So this is what it looks like. And this is your annual amount per year. So if an organization has received a 21st Century Grant before, and that is ending this school year, they're not going to have any more funding, you could do this reapplication. So applying for all the same sites, the same goals, the same outcomes, you could do what we call a reapplication. And you could, but you'd still have that reduction. This is a change from some previous grants in the past. With those reapplication grants, there was not that reduction, but moving forward, we will have that reduction for any grants labeled as reapplication, new reapplication grants. So they'll have the reduction in year 4 and the reduction in year 5. So the grant opened a couple weeks ago. Today, you're all at the Bidders Conference. You have a required letter of intent due on May 3rd, so please get that in. It's just a Google form. That's why I encourage you to sign in. If I don't have your email, there's a link on our website as well, but please submit that letter of intent. That helps us to know how many applications we could potentially expect. We have to prepare for grant readers, which is quite a process to get people to read our applications. So if I know I have 30 letters of intent, I can plan my grant readers around that. That's why we ask for the letter of intent. The applications are due in Utah Grants. We've had a transition from Utah Consolidated Application and to Utah Grants. That's our new system, and you have all of the application documents right now, so you can start looking at them, but eventually you will upload all of your application documents into Utah Grants, and then you'll do your budget in Utah Grants. So we're gonna have a whole section where we talk about that. And if you're not registered for Utah Grants, you're a community-based organization, let me know as soon as possible and we will get you registered for that. Then we have the grant review period. So grants are due on the 5th of June. And then we have our grant review period where those will be with the group of readers to use a rubric to score, to have enough time. And then I'm trying to get out notifications the first week of July as soon as possible so you can know. I'm hoping the award letters can be initiated that week as well. We are likely going to have a lot of revisions in the system, so that could slow us down, but hoping you get through everything that week. So there's 239 possible points. All applications are reviewed utilizing the rubric that you all have that was sent out on Friday. Our grant readers have experience with youth development and grant management. They receive training, this very similar training to what you're receiving today. They'll receive the same training so they know. They go through a conflict of interest process. And anyone can request their organization's grant evaluation rubric. So this is our process for that peer review. So I'm going to have Zach Christensen He's our Director of Purchasing and Contracts, give you some information about the appeals process. So if after you go through writing, submitting the application, and maybe you don't agree with the decision, we do have an appeals process, and he's gonna talk about that.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the procurement code, which is this lovely little binder, 63G6A. It's my fun little friend. For those of you who are familiar, there is a couple different sections. There are a couple of sections that deal with protest and appeals. And because this is a grant process, we decided to apply the procurement, protest, and appeals process to it, just to make sure that there's that review and the ability to have an additional set of eyes if there's a complaint on that. So under the procurement code, if you feel that any of the requirements are unduly restrictive, they are not fair or clear, you have to protest that while the grant is open before the submission date. If you do not, you lose and you forfeit the right to complain that the requirements were confusing, ambiguous, or unduly restrictive. So please review, and if you have questions, please ask questions, or if you still feel that they are unduly restrictive, then you can submit a protest and say, you know, we object to these criteria, these processes, because whatever your grounds are. So once the grant has closed, you can no longer protest that the requirements were confusing, ambiguous, or unduly restrictive. If after that, and after the grant awards have been made, you would like to protest because you feel that something has gone on that you have not been awarded what you should, or it wasn't reviewed or evaluated properly, you can also submit a protest. But because we are applying the procurement code to this, there are limited reasons that you can protest. And one of the reasons that is not allowed is I should have been awarded more points. So that is not sufficient grounds in and of itself to protest. You have to have some other grounds. If you're claiming that there was some kind of bias, you have to have some kind of evidence that there was bias for or against someone. You just can't make that claim without having some kind of supporting documentation with that. So we have everything in here, and I will,
And we thought we were covered.
oh, I'm not, okay. So with all of this, I'm going to copy out part 16 and part 17 of the procurement code, which covers the protest and appeals process, and make that available with Camille as well. If during any of the process you have questions on procedure or what something means within the code and that, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help walk through all of that. But please know that I will not write your protest or appeal for you. That is not something that I will ever do. But if you have questions about, you know, how do I do this, or what does, you know, having, you know, evidence mean, I would be happy to go through and kind of walk through the code provisions with you, just to make sure that you are comfortable with and you understand what we are expecting of everyone. So, any questions? Fantastic.
We'll get a summary of what Zach discussed, so everyone can have it. We'll post it to our webpage for 21st Century. All right, so moving along to grant submission requirements. As I mentioned, you do need to complete the letter of intent that helps us plan for how many applications to expect. So it just looks like this. And just make sure that you press submit. If you're having any issues with it, just email me and we can see what's going on. So that's due by May 5th at 11:59 p.m. Okay, so last year with the 21st Century application, we were in this bubble period where we didn't have to submit in, because we didn't have Utah Consolidated application. They were phasing out of that. We didn't have Utah grants fully ready to go for new competitive grants. So we got to work outside of the system. This year, we're kind of partially outside of the system as well because you have all the application documents now, but eventually you will submit into Utah Grants. So for those of you who don't have a Utah Grants profile set up, we will get you one, and you can have that. If you're a district or charter school, it's very likely you already have one, or if you've applied with us for other grants as a community-based organization, you likely have one. If you currently have 21st Century funding, you'll have one. So, but just as a reminder, it's a two-step approval process. So as soon as it opens in the system, I'll let everyone know. You'll start working on your application documents, gathering your required documentation. You'll gather all of that, and then you'll need to upload that into Utah Grants. You have some instructions in your packet of many documents. They look like this. And so please refer to those. But remember, any kind of submission requires two-step approval. So we have the person who first finds the grant opportunity in Utah Grants. They're labeled as a creator, and they're the only ones who can edit the application. So the creator is the only one who can edit. People can see it, they can review it, but they cannot, they can't be the editor. So keep that in mind. If someone accidentally grabs this because they're like, oh, I thought this was for adult ed or something like that, just remember, call us and we'll try to work something out. But it requires a two-step approval process with that creator, whoever is the first one to grab the application, sending it to your organization's internal approver. This is typically the business administrator for charter schools, school districts. For community-based organizations, it might be the executive director or a director at another level. But I would encourage you to find those things out now and to see if you needed to be added as a user to the system. So you could be the one, if that is part of your job and your organization wants you to have a user profile, let's do that now. Rather than like 2 days before it's due. So we're encouraging everyone to go through these now, the instructions, and get familiar, make sure they're a user, that you have a profile, you know who your internal approver is, because sometimes, as with a lot of systems, it might be like 11:50 p.m. on the day the grant is due, and you're like, okay, I got this, it's not good, but then you find out, oh, I need my internal approver to go through this, but they're not available, or they're on vacation, or it's 11:50 p.m. at night, they're sleeping. So let's work through that now. Do we have a question from Margaret?
Do we mail any of this documentation in a packet to your office?
No, you'll PDF everything. So make it a PDF. I think you can still upload a Word document and you'll submit it. So you can submit all of your documentation into the Utah Grants system. So you'll do your budget and then you'll submit the application documents I sent. So.
Am I right that only one person then can make any edits or changes to the online documents?
Yes. So that will be, because all of the application documents and documentation will be, Word, PDF, you'll have the form fill, you'll have the gap analysis, that's Excel, and then to the actual, what we call an application in the system is really your budget, and you'll have like a brief synopsis of the project. So it'll be like putting in your line item budget. There's a little box for your budget narrative. All of that will be done in the system. But yes, you are right. Only one person can edit that.
And that same person is the only one who can upload any of the other documents?
Yes, I believe so. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. Maybe talk about who that person is going to be right now and make sure that they are able to submit by that deadline because the system will. So things that you'll need, you'll do your grant budget in Utah Grants. The grant application questions are the PDF form fill. The gap analysis form is an Excel form. You'll need partnership letters from districts or schools. Those can be PDF documents, scanned documents, Word documents, absolute priority. So the documentation that we need for sure would be showing that your program sites are all at 40% or more poverty levels. And then if you are going to go and have any of the additional priority points that require the documentation, so having a certified teacher overseeing the program, serving the program serves 50% or more of youth from refugee backgrounds, we do need that documentation if you want those priority points. So that's just an overview of the submission.
For the certified teacher, do you just want like a screenshot of their Texas information?
Yes, you can send that information. You can show, there's like the example that I provided in the priority point documentation packet. So we just need something because, you know, sometimes these who gets funded and who doesn't get funded comes down to 3 points. And if you were required to submit documentation and that documentation wasn't submitted, then you wouldn't get those points. So make sure if you are submitting that documentation and labeling it as you're uploading it into Utah Grants, so we know what is what. So as I mentioned, you have the instructions. Unfortunately, at this time, if you call me and you're like, I'm trying to submit, I'm gonna try to help you through these instructions. So if you keep anything from today, please keep these instructions. They're also available on our website, but they're kind of many clicks to get to them. So please keep these instructions. It's not a one-to-one of what I see. So I can't see exactly what you see on your screen. I see a very different screen. So I can't walk you through these exactly today, but these are the instructions. And it's not always instinctual. It's a new system. We're working with it, but please give me a call or email me as you're trying to go through it, and I can maybe try to help you with some different things. And sometimes it doesn't always work, and so we have to bring in other people who are very familiar with the system. But just give me a call or shoot me an email, like, the system is really not working. Maybe it's the day the application is due and the system is just not working. Shoot me an email so we can try to make it work.
And you know the hotline number.
Yes.
She's really good.
Kelly was going to come talk with us in a bit, but she's not here yet. But yes, I will send out the hotline number. We have a help desk, so if you're having major issues, but you can always call me and I can try to help you with what I can. So as some reminders, the first person to start the Utah Grants application is the creator and the only person who can edit. I will verify that they're the only person who can add the attachments as well. So if you are a school district or charter school, please utilize the fiscal year 20 restricted indirect cost rate. So for this grant, because it's federal, we use the restricted indirect cost rate. And those are published, and I'll send everyone a link of where you can find them. The system will automatically calculate that. They'll calculate whatever that your district, so if you're Ogden School District, it'll calculate that rate. So how many community-based organizations do I have here today? Okay, so community-based organizations can also charge indirect costs. It's up to 10%. That's been the federal guidance, but we are working through that right now. If you had an indirect cost previously in the Utah grant system, I don't know if it will default to that or if you could use the full 10%. So if I will email all of the community-based organizations those specific details if you want to take indirect cost rates. There's some that are in the system, but then we have the federal rule that you can take up to 10%. So we will get that resolved with community-based organizations. And again, your successful submission requires a two-step approval process. So knowing who your internal approver is for your organization is very critical. Making sure they're not going on a cool cruise right before the application is due, and maybe they don't have the best Wi-Fi access. Just things to consider as we're approaching our deadline. And just keep in contact with me so I know what to expect, or if we're having system issues, so I can report them to the Utah Grants team. Any questions about Utah Grants?
Input and do things little by little, or does it have to all go in at once?
I think you can do things little by little and just as make sure you're saving your application, but it could only be one person for your organization. So if you're that designated person, then you would be the one who's communicating with everyone and getting stuff in. It does allow you to save and come back to it. So in terms of after-school programs and quality, we want quality after-school programs because that's how we're going to get better outcomes for our kids. So as a reminder, the State Board of Education does have a rule around out-of-school time standards. It aligns with the quality tool self-assessment we're using, as well as the program quality assessment tool, the observation tool. So we really want programs to be safe. That's kind of the baseline, the foundation of quality. Programs need to be safe. You need to have policies and procedures to account for that. Emergency drills, all of that needs to be, before you move forward with the grant program. You have to have a plan to work all of that out. So just keep that in mind. Also, building relationships between youth and staff in the programs, as well as youth to youth. We want them to develop those meaningful relationships. Kids connect to the staff in the program, not necessarily because you're using like a cool curriculum, which is obviously encouraged, but they're connecting to the people in the programs. The people can make all the difference in the world for a program. So as you're developing your applications and thinking about quality, relationships are very important, as well as designing a well-rounded program that not only includes academic supports, but having those enrichment, those fun things. So we know they need to get the academic enrichment. That support is absolutely needed. That's why we have this funding. But they also need to have some more of the fun things, experiential learning, project-based learning, so they'll come back and they'll want to come to after-school programs. And they won't just come to after-school programs in elementary school, but they'll keep coming when they're in middle school and high school because they know, like, I met this great staff person and they did this really cool activity with me. So they'll keep coming back. So we want programs that are not only educational, but fun. We can't lose that piece. Obviously, we can't have like bounce houses or things like that that are paid for by this funding, but having the balance of academic enrichment is critical. For quality after-school programs, and then having a program that is effectively administered. So a good, sound, organizational process. So it's not just we can't just have one person running a program, but there's supports in place to help all of the different moving parts that after-school is. So keep that in mind. We do have a rule around that. We contract out with Utah After School Network to provide technical assistance and training. They're going to talk here in just a bit, so keep that in mind. So if you are awarded, these are just some of the responsibilities, would be to attend an annual grant orientation meeting. With this grant program, we're often learning more things at the federal level that we need to share with you so that you know how to incorporate those into your funded programs. So we'll have an annual orientation meeting. You'll need to collect student achievement data and progress towards program goals, as well as having a periodic evaluation of the program, and that can be internal, external, but having a way to know that you're meeting the targets that you set forth in the application. And we'll talk more about this, but you need to have a sliding fee scale to encourage access for all students with an advertised free option for those students eligible for free lunch. It's really critical. This funding is for those students who are most vulnerable. They need these programs, and even if it's a $10 fee and it can't be waived, it can still be restrictive. If they have to go through paperwork, if they have to maybe their parents don't fully understand that. So having that free option for students eligible for free lunch is very important, not only at the federal level, but at the state level. We're having a lot of discussions around school fees. So please, you have to have that sliding fee scale option. It's critical that we don't have any barriers that would restrict participation. So you will collect and submit required data for the 21 APR. That's our federal reporting system. So how we report to the feds that our programs are doing well is the 21 APR system. And you have a nice colored paper in your packet that looks like this. So we use teacher-reported progress around homework and participation and student behavior, and then state assessments to report to our federal partners how the programs are doing. This is our required reporting system. It's called 21 APR. They are working to revise some of the program measures which are listed on the back. At our last state coordinators meeting for this federal grant program, they said they were trying to cut these down because we have 14, so they're trying to cut them down to 3 or 5. But these are our measures right now. So this is how Congress reports, or this is how, for this grant, we report to Congress. And so this has to do with keeping the funding, showing outcomes. So this data is very important. You'll also submit a continuation application each year in years 2 through 5. You'll participate in technical assistance with Utah After School Network, our Utah After School Network partner. They have out-of-school time specialists who come in. They want to learn about your program, help support your program. You'll do the quality tool, which is a self-assessment tool. And right now, with 21st Century funded programs, we are doing program observations on a priority level. So maybe if you are funded, some of your program sites will receive an observation with the program quality assessment tool. It's our observation tool. It's a nationally validated tool. Ben's going to talk more about that in just a bit. You'll participate in any federal or state evaluations, and it's important to report back to your community around your successes, the good things you're doing. So just an overview of grant responsibilities. Coming back to program fees, you can charge fees in the program. Our state has a waiver from the federal government to allow these types of programs to collect fees, which are considered program income, but they must be reinvested back into the program. But you also, you can charge nominal fees. And nominal is very general, and I think sometimes with our federal partners, they want to leave it up to the state to determine what is nominal. So you can have a sliding fee scale, but you need to have it advertised and you need to have a free option. So for parents, for whatever reason, they can't pay. If they're eligible for free lunch, then they need to participate in the program for free. There can't be any barriers to access. So fees can't be a barrier to access. So there always needs to be an option if for whatever reason a family can't pay that nominal fee. And when you consider nominal, I would look to the community you're serving. Could they pay a $10 monthly fee for maybe someone who's not on free or reduced price lunch? Look to your community and see, is that going to be a barrier? Any questions on program fees? All right, in your packet, you have this green document. This is going over evidence-based, part of evidence-based practices. So for this federally funded grant, we don't necessarily have to use a specific level, like there's certain levels of research that you'd have to use. We're using, so that you have a theory of action that demonstrates a rationale. So that whatever kind of framework you're using, that it might not be statistically significant, but you're using a theory of action that pulls from other existing research. So you don't have to have like an evidence-based curriculum. You could have something that in your program, based on your theory of action, that it's getting you the outcomes you need, and it is based on some research. So we're not, some of the other title programs have very stringent requirements for using types of evidence. This program that you just have to, it demonstrates a rationale. So you have a strong theory of action based on research, and you're implementing that into your program as a framework. Maybe you develop some curriculum, but again, it's not evidence-based, but it's based on this theory of action that is supported by previous research. So just as a reminder, as you're going through, a lot of programs will use certain curriculums that are evidence-based. They've gone through that rigorous process, but I know there's some programs who internally develop some of their own frameworks that they're pulling from other disciplines that are evidence-based. You can still use those with this program. So just a reminder. So another big aspect of the program is this periodic evaluation. So you'll write about this in your grant application, that you need to have some kind of program evaluation. It could be internal, it could be external, but that you're using whatever the results of that external or internal evaluation to guide the program, how you implement and develop the program, and that it's made public upon request. So as you're writing your application, just consider that. What is that process is going to be? What is that continuous cycle quality improvement? So think about that as you are writing your application. And then this is just a summary of some of the requirements. With 21 APR, we're always entering data a year behind. So we will start entering data for this school year starting in the summer. We're always a year behind with the 21 APR. Continuation applications are typically in the spring. You'll have your periodic program evaluations ongoing. Monitoring will be based on risk assessment. So we are shifting as an agency to risk-based monitoring. So that will be done in Utah Grants. And as we get more information about that process, we will let all of our grantees know. But we are moving towards risk-based monitoring. I will also come out and visit your programs. I like to get familiar with the programs, get familiar with you, meet some of your staff. So I will go out. Right now we have a monitoring checklist that aligns with the federal regulations. So I will go through that. I am trying to refine it to make it more clear, but you will have monitoring on that level. And then this is just quality improvement efforts. We've talked about technical assistance with Utah After School Network. Some of their out-of-school time specialists might be visiting your programs. They might be doing observations. You'll do the quality tool, and then there's a quality tool program information that's submitted that is kind of demographic data around your program that Utah After School Network, as well as other partners, Department of Workforce Services and Office of Child Care, we often use. So that's just a summary. And any questions about the requirements? Okay, we're going to shift to have Stephanie. She is with adult education because one of the focus areas is connecting families with literacy and other related educational opportunities. So we want you to know some resources about how to do that, who to connect within your district. Maybe you're a community-based organization and you're not sure how to do that. So she's going to speak to that. And she has a handout for you.
A couple, actually.
No. I guess they have it out. Do you want to split?
Okay, so I'm Stephanie Patton. Right up here. See if that works better. So I've been here at USB for about 4 years. Been doing adult education for longer. So adult education, we provide 3 main services. If you guys are already aware of this, I'm sorry that I'm giving you extraneous information, but the 3 main services include adult basic education. So that's for students who come in with academic skills below high school level. So they can start from 0 to 8th grade levels. And then we provide adult high school completion. So that includes both GED preparation or diplomas. And there's no age limit for our credit-based diplomas, by the way. Sometimes people think that's only until like 19 or something, but here in Utah you can get a credit-based diploma until you're dead. There's no age limit for that. It is based on like 24 credits, so just a basic diploma. So we do that as well, GED prep and high school credit-based diplomas. And then our third service is English language acquisition. And most of our programs, you can see one of the handouts that you just received is a directory. And you can see that most of our programs are actually connected to a school district. We're in all of the school districts in some way or another. Some of them are served, for instance, Rich has they're served through Morgan County School District, but we still provide services in Rich County. Or Logan and Cache have actually combined because it makes a lot of sense up there. Both receive services. So this will tell you where they are, and you can see we're all over the state. We do also partner with a couple of community-based organizations to provide some additional, more specialized types of services. So we work with Asian Association here in the Wasatch Front and Guadalupe School to provide some English language acquisition programs. And we also partner with Project Read and Literacy Action Center that really focus on providing those lower academic levels, reading skills for students who are really low that way. They're all really great partners. So as far as being eligible to be in adult education, students have to be at least 16. But again, there's no maximum age limit. So parents of the students who you're working with, these are great resources to build family literacy as a whole. And some of our programs do have some family literacy programs, especially Horizonte here in Salt Lake. They have some family literacy programs where you're reaching out and would be a great partner to make sure that the family is reached as a whole. So this tells you kind of the basics. We have 15,000 students that we kept for extended amounts of time. More than that walk in our door a year. So we serve quite a few students. And you can see that a large number of those are ELL students, English language learners. One of my favorite statistics, is that if a student comes into adult education and spends 100 hours, they receive, this is on average, but an annual increase of $9,000 actually in earnings. So it can impact a family in a very dramatic way, right? That's significant when you're at a poverty level, especially if you go out $9,000 a year. We gave out just over 1,000 diplomas last year, 1620 diplomas, and 939 GEDs. More than that were earned in the state GEDs, but those are students that we actually helped prepare to pass, and 11,000 academic level gains. So we do some pretty good work. There is a link to our adult education website if you need additional information, but as you're looking for potential partners, look at the list, the directory of programs, because I think we're a natural fit for this population. So reach out to them, they'll be very interested in partnering with you. Any questions? Is that kind of what you wanted? Awesome.
Thank you.
Is this a resource that's just available, or is this something you write into your grant saying you're partnering?
You do need to talk about how you're going to provide those educational opportunities and connections for families. So this is a resource, but also a good reminder as you're writing applications. That's one of the focus areas of this grant, is to provide a center, the school, the community-based organ, whatever it is, so parents know they can go if they need those resources, and that they can, they trust that organization, and okay, I can go there, they can help me. So it is something that is an application, but just a good tie-in. Any other questions? Thank you, Stephanie. So yes, you can find their website. I can send this out, just gives you a summary and some resources and who you could connect with. She said she provided the directory, but tying that in, maybe not all families will access that, but there are families who would need that. So consider who you're serving, your need, to build these opportunities for families. So now we are going to transition to talk about child nutrition programs. So I have Kathleen Mogg here with us today from the Child Nutrition Program, and she's going to talk about how you potentially could get on these various programs for after-school snack, for dinner. What's down? Scroll for you. You lovely.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, cool. So Matt Anderson couldn't be here today. He's at a conference, so predominantly you would be dealing with Matt Anderson in our office. He's over the at-risk after-school snack and summer programs. if you're familiar with that. So I will refer to him with any questions that you do have. Please contact Matt. He's over that. I just help him. I'm lowly in the totem pole. So,
But
yeah, sure, instrumental. But just so that you guys know or are aware of our programs, it's a reimbursement program, so it's not a grant. So there is that, you upfront and then ask for reimbursement. The best thing is to really utilize our programs in the aspect that you're not utilizing your grant funds to pay for snack or for meals for your after-school programs. I know as a past after-school program provider myself, running programs, that snack it costs a lot, right? And so if you're thinking about taking that out of your grant funds, there's a resource for you so that you can utilize those funds for extra staffing, for extra supplies or equipment for your kiddos. Really utilizing those resources to help your community more than just buying snack for the kids or meals. Another thing I would like to push is the at-risk after-school supper, or we like to call it super snack, so that's not stigmatized. Really utilizing that to provide a full service or a full meal to your students, and just because it's supper doesn't mean it has to be served at 6 o'clock at night. It can be served right after school, and it'll be a full meal for those kids. So if you're currently on our snack program, contact Matt about questioning about a full meal. There are a couple of companies that we have worked with in providing full meals, so if you don't have the facility yourself to cook a full meal or to have the staff time to make a meal, there are companies out there that will do that and then basically ship it to you guys and serve it, right, in combos. So you can provide a full hot meal to those students without you having to be the ones preparing it. Also, sometimes it's misconstrued that a meal is something intense and you don't have the time for it. It's something as simple as a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with a fruit and vegetable and a carton of milk. That is considered a full meal. So those reimbursements, depending on your eligibility in that area, it could be up to $2.46 per meal if you're doing supper. Snack is up to 91 cents for a snack. So that's all dependent upon your eligibility. Part of that in determining your eligibility is utilizing the October survey, which I know that some of you are familiar with, or hopefully you're familiar with, because that's how you're qualifying your areas to apply for this grant for 21st Century. So that can be found on USBE's website. You also provided that. Okay, so Camille's going to email it out to you, but it is available at all times on the USBE's website. It's going to be in your data and statistics area, and then you go to reports, and then it's under CMP, Child Nutrition Programs. If you want to know how that's collected, it's basically at the beginning of the school year when the schools are receiving their free and reduced meal applications. We take that data as of October 31st of how many students qualify for free and reduced lunch, and then find out that eligibility and percentage. So all of that data has been validated, and it is correct up there. So we are in the 2018. That's the most recent one. So it's just a download. It's an Excel file, and then you can search it for the school or schools that you'll be serving for your students. Okay. Any questions? Real quick. I think most of you probably are already participating on our programs.
Do you have people come and do checks on your meals, meal checks?
Yes. Yes, so as part of that, it is a federal program, so you are subject to reviews, depending on what review cycle you're on. Usually if it's your first year, we'll come out and do a review because it is your first year and we want to catch things before it happens. Really, we're here as a resource to you more than anything. I know that we are reviewers. That's not the fun part of our job. The best part of our job is really being able to find solutions for you guys and what's going to best work for you. So please utilize us with any questions. Again, Matt Anderson is going to be the one that you predominantly will be speaking with, but any of us in the office will be able to help you. Yes? Good? No more questions? You can hand the mic over? Cool.
Right.
Puts a lot of pressure on
It
them.
does, it's so much pressure. Yes, so Matt Anderson is your contact. Please work it out with him. He will move heaven and earth to get you, if you qualify, on this program. So we really encourage that. Kids are hungry. I'm hungry all the time, so I can't imagine children. Maybe they didn't like what was at lunch that day, and they might not get anything better at home. They need to have snack and dinner options, and we have resources available. So we encourage you, if you can be part of these programs, to be part of these programs. All right, so before we have Utah After School Network talk, I'm going to have Kelly Smith from our office. She is the hotline that we were speaking of, the Utah Grants hotline.
Don't write it on the bathroom wall.
Just tell me where to go. Oh, you gotta be mic'd.
My name is Kelly Smith. I am the help desk for Utah Grants. I'm not the only one, but I answer most of the calls because I'm the lowest on the totem pole, so they'll come to me. There is a great resource if you go onto our webpage under financial operations. And on the right-hand side, there's about 3/4 of the way down, it says Utah Grants. And then it will come up with all of these PDFs. I suggest you use them. There is also a training video that this answers a lot of your questions. If you call me with a question, I'll go to here to look it up myself. Actually, I have the instructions printed in a book, but I'll go through, and it's Utah Grants is a step-by-step. Just follow the steps exactly. If it says click on a green triangle, just follow the steps very precisely, and you will be able to work through the process. Another call I get often, one of the calls I get often on is your username. 95% of the time, your username is your email address. There's a few that the system puts numbers in. I'm not sure why the system assigns them. Sometimes they put numbers at the end, and so you'll call me, I can't get in. It won't let me in, I can't reset my password. And then I will look at your username and say, oh, remember you have 3, 4, 5 at the end. You need to use that for your username. I can reset passwords. If you can't remember a password, call me, I'll reset your password. If the system doesn't allow you to, usually it's because your username is incorrect. So when you, if those kind of issues, just call the help desk line. Let me give you that number. It's 801-538-7604. Also in Utah Grants, there is a help up at the top. Click that, it will generate an email to me, or there is the phone numbers there that if you need to call.
Kelly, where is the help located? I can't show them this.
It has to be actually in the system.
Is it?
It's on the top of
Okay.
There's a little help. I think it's got a question mark. Or call that phone number. Other than that, these instructions will tell you how to start a grant. If you don't know how, there'll be how to do competitive grants. There's instructions there. If you need to set up a new user, your key point of contact needs to set up a new user. One thing I will caution, do not, never, ever, absolutely not use somebody else's email or password or user login. Use your own. If you don't have one, call, we'll get you one. Or I will tell you how to get your key point of contact to get you one. But do not share your username and password with anybody else. For auditing purposes, you do not want to be using somebody else's and be getting in trouble because you use theirs. I've had a couple of people call and say, I'm using their login. No. Get your own login, your own password, because the system tracks every step you make. And if it's not a good step, anyway, just do not use anybody else's login. Use your own if you need one. Call me and I can help your key point of contact create one for you. If you want to start, you always go to application and pending tasks, and you'll understand once you get in there. I'm not doing a training, I'm doing an overview. There's just follow the instructions. Call though. I would love to help you. I answer the phone pretty much 24/7. So call if you have a question. I would love to help. Email is the help desk icon also was helpful. So.
Thank you, Kelly.
I've been going through Utah grants as well. Often they'll have a box that has like that they want you to type, but then it will, at the end, will have a magnifying glass, like a search thing. Always press the magnifying search glass. Don't try to type, because you'll keep getting an error. We learned that the hard way early on. If there's a magnifying glass, even if it'll let you type, and it'll often let you type, always click the magnifying glass. That could save you like an hour or two, because it will just keep bringing up the error, and we're like, the system is broken. But we have to click the magnifying glass, so keep that in mind. All right, so now we're going to have Ben Trentleman from the Utah After School Network talk about technical, so give you an overview of Utah After School Network and technical assistance.
All right, hello, I'm Ben Trentleman. I'm the Director of Operations with Utah After School Network. It's always a pleasure to get to come to these to talk about the services that we're fortunate to provide to you as part of your grant with the State Board of Education. So at the After School Network, our vision is that every child in the state has access to high quality after school programming. And so basically where we fit in with your programs, if you receive this funding from USBE, is that this is technical assistance that is included as a part of the grant. So it's like you just bought a new car and you have a year of oil changes and maintenance on that car that is free of any charge to you, and it's just there when you need it. So we're that for quality. We're like the quality helpline. So basically, who we are, quick overview of this. We're a small but mighty team. Our executive director, Kelly, who's actually sitting over here right now. Our professional learning systems team, Emily Holdaway and Amberly Motz. Our out-of-school time specialist team, there are a couple that are not pictured here because they're brand new to the team, but we have Kristen, Eleanor, Angel, Chaz, and Erica Andino. Erica just joined us in the last couple weeks here from Salt Lake City School District programs. We have Holly Phillips, who is here as well. She is our new school alignment specialist, and actually Holly is working to help to create more systematized tools to help to integrate after-school programming into the school day and vice versa, to make resources available to after-school programs to better improve their partnerships with the school day. And then we also have a STEM Vista, Dallas Thornley, who is working with us on our STEM initiatives right now as well. So if you see any of us in your school, then you should be comforted that UAN is there to support your quality needs. So what we do is basically we have a three-pronged approach in the services that we provide to programs or that we provide throughout the state. First off, we support programs. That's through our technical assistance and support. We support staff through our professional learning opportunities. And then we support after school and large. The Utah After School Network is an advocacy organization as well, where we're active during the legislative session. We advise programs on how to outreach and advocate for their own programs as well. In supporting programs, basically our out-of-school time specialists are there to help your program to engage in a year-long system. It's longer than a year, but really within that school year, a process in evaluating your program, establishing goals and needs, and then helping you to create an implementation plan where you're working on those goals and implementing those goals throughout the year. And so that may look like how you're conducting your staff meeting, the types of trainings that you have available to your team, making sure that you're planning effectively, that you're planning intentionally, using the data that's at your disposal to plan programs that will be more impactful to the youth that you're serving as well. That may look like consulting in your program, providing coaching, providing presentations. We get a lot of requests for things like presentations and trainings on behavior management. That's a big one that we're able to provide a lot of different support for as well as providing resources and facilitating those trainings. The Utah After School Network has a very robust website where we have a searchable resource library. We have resources around anything that you may encounter in after school. If you find something that's not there, let us know and we'll make sure that we can add it there as well. But otherwise, there are a lot of different things that are available as you need them there. In addition to our resources, we also, as Camille had mentioned, we administer the quality self-assessment tool. This is something that opens up at the beginning of the year, which you will complete as a requirement of the grant. But it's also, I'd like to emphasize the tool component in there. This is something that you can utilize throughout the year as you're onboarding staff, as you're building relationships within schools or within programs and things along those lines, or building relationships with community partners. Our quality self-assessment tool, those are best practices that we believe in the state of Utah that you can utilize in your program at any time. It's great in making sure that your staff are well-versed in what you're doing and why you're trying to do it, because these are best practices. Our program information form, as Camille mentioned, if you receive this funding, you'll complete at the end of next year. It's currently open right now, so if you have funding now, it's due in May, is a nice reminder for you there. And basically in our program information form, we're looking at demographic information, who your students are, who you're serving, how often they're attending, where your program is, any other challenges that you have, and things of that nature. And we utilize this information in a number of different ways. In our advocacy efforts, we also use it in how we report to the State Board of Education, as well as the Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care. We used a lot of this information. Just this last year, we released a After School in Utah report that talks about trends and statistics all throughout the state and what after school looks like in all of the various communities that after school programs are available. And so a lot of that information came from you, from completing this program information form. So as you see that, look forward to completing it, because it helps us to see exactly what is happening all throughout the state.
Ben?
Yes?
Could you explain the relationship between PQA and the quality assessment?
Well, your question is so timely, Margaret, because that is exactly what I'm discussing right now. So we are, in addition to providing the quality self-assessment tool, that is a self-evaluation tool that you can utilize in your programs. We can, of course, come in and help support you in going through the self-evaluation process. But something new that we've started doing over the last couple of years here is providing external observations to programs. And so what we are utilizing is the Weichert Center's Program Quality Assessment Tool. And they have a school-age assessment tool for school-age programs and a youth assessment program for teen programs. And this is something for some of the DWS grants that are out there. It's a requirement that a number of those programs participate in it. And here it will be based on the needs of those programs on a priority level. And so basically we work with USBE to create a rubric in how we rate where those programs are. And really it's things like, if this is your first time receiving this funding, if you have a brand new program that you're establishing, if you have brand new leadership in your program and you'd maybe like someone to provide that external observation to help to give them an idea of what's happening in your program so they can really hit the ground running, and things along those lines. And so as that comes up, once the grant is awarded, either USBE or UAN or some combo of the two of us, we'll let you know if you're receiving one of those observations. It is something that you can also opt into if you'd like. We are happy to provide these observations to programs. And so basically in completing these observations, we're looking at best practices in programs, and what's nice about the PQA is it has a focus on practices around relationships with youth. And so we come into the program, we're there for one activity is about the span of time that we expect for this. So basically 30 to 60 minutes is the time that we're in your program to watch one structured activity. In that time, we're looking at your staff, we're looking at how they're interacting with kids, if they're using reflective techniques, if they're engaging with the kids, if kids have opportunities to express themselves and things along those lines that are there. And then we complete a score for that, and then we come up and we have a meeting with you to review what your score was and what areas of improvement we can maybe identify to help you as you move forward. So ideally, what your year can look like if you receive this funding is as we get into the fall, you complete your self-assessment early on in the year, and then one of our specialists will come out, or myself if you're really lucky, will come out to provide your observation for you. And then once all that's completed, you have an external observation, an internal evaluation, and then you've got a lot of data to inform exactly what types of goals you'd like to have for your program. If it has to do with attendance in your program, behavior, how you're structuring your staff meetings, any number of those different things. It's really driven by your need, is what we want to express the most. So you shouldn't have an OST specialist that comes to your program and they're really bossy and they're telling you exactly what you need to be successful. We'll try to find out what works best for you, and then we'll cater our support to what your needs are and what your goals are and how we can work with you on that. Did that answer your question, Margaret, more or less?
Yes.
All right, no problem. All right, also in supporting staff, we have a number of professional development opportunities that UAN provides. Our Jumpstart Conference will actually be the 1st and 2nd of November this coming year, and that will be in Ogden again. We'll have more information about that as it comes out. We also have our Northern and Southern Recharge Conferences, which happened earlier in the year. We actually just wrapped those up. Behavior Management Institute. Our Behavior Management Institute is a really great opportunity for providers because you're able to come to an in-person training where you're able to work with some of our partners from the University of Utah on specific behavior techniques that you can implement in your program. And what's nice about this is your staff is there as a team. And so they're all learning together. They're learning shared language. They're learning about how they need to function as a cohesive team to best support kids as they move forward. And then as a follow-up to participating in the Behavior Management Institute, we actually have a specialist come out to do an observation in your program to look at which of those practices you're currently implementing and which ones you can work to improve upon and things along those lines. None of these trainings are a requirement of this grant, just to state that, but USB is largely supportive of this because professional development is an important aspect of the work that we all do here. Yeah.
So is there a fee for any of these?
Yes, they all have a fee to attend, and there are also learning awards that may be available for some of those as well. And so like Behavior Management Institute, I believe is, I don't want to rattle these off because I'm going to give you the wrong information as I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Jumpstart Conference is about $150 to register. Once that, for that, it's a 2-day conference. Each of those are 8-hour days, and so it's a very rich experience for you. Northern Recharge is $50 to attend, and the Behavior Management Institute is also $50, I believe, per individual. We have an online learning module that we utilize that actually has a lot of information that's available in learning modules from entry-level staff on up to management levels. And so basically they're able to talk about after-school trends, very basic things that your staff may need to be equipped with as far as planning curriculum, behavior management, things along those lines. There are also things in there as well if you want to utilize Google Sheets. There's a platform in there in using Google Sheets as well. And that's something that is $75 to register for that online e-learning institute. This is something that's really great for rural communities or to have on board, just on reserve if you have new people that are coming in. High turnover is something that we deal with in this field. And so it's hard, I know, to have that constant onboarding all throughout the year where you have someone that started in January and then someone that started in March or something like that. This is nice because you can give them that well-rounded base to start things out without having to repeat yourself too much as a leader or something along those lines. And then another opportunity that we have as well are regional networks. And this is something that's free, that's also not a part of your requirements for your grant at all. But it's a community of your peers within a specific region that you're able to partner with and tackle things that are mutually important to all of you around training needs, advocacy needs. We've seen some great staffing solutions come out of some of those different networks as well. And so we have information about all of these things that are up on our website that are available to you that I'd encourage you to check out as well. Yes?
Just for budget purposes, do you know the price for Jumpstart this year?
I think it should be about the same price. Oh, Kelly is giving me this sign, which is not.
It's slightly increased, but only by like $5 or $10.
Slightly increased, but only by $5 or $10.
And hotel will be close to the same.
Yeah.
So what, can you go into that one just a little bit more, the Jumpstart Conference, what does it entail?
Right, so it's a 2-day conference. We have folks from after school, school day educators, higher ed that are there, as well as licensed childcares that attend that conference. And basically we have several different workshops that are taking place all throughout both of those 2 days. So some of them are more lecture-based, some of them are very interactive. We have a lot of fun presenters that come out where we basically have national speakers that come from all over the country, as well as a lot of local experts as well. So things that we've talked about in the past have been some of those more basic things that you want for programming, how you're planning your curriculums, specific curriculums that you can utilize, like we have the drum bus that comes and you get to sit in the bus and play drums with the drum bus. Or we've had in the last couple of years, we've been increasing the number of prevention-related trainings that we have available. So last year we had panels on around suicide prevention. We have panels and workshops around drug prevention as well, and how you can better address those things in your programs. And so we have it structured so that There tend to be a few more administrative themed things that are happening on that Friday of that conference, just because we know it's harder for your frontline staff to get out of work on those Fridays. But there's something for everybody both days. And then that second day, we kind of see more of the frontline staff that are there throughout the day there as well. We also have people that are tabling, vendors that are able to talk about community resources and other things that you can use in your programs. And then there's a lot more information about it on our website as well. So we're happy to share about that. Yeah.
Do you have the dates?
The Jumpstart Conference will be the 1st and 2nd of November. And then I think that other dates are still to be determined as far as that goes. But let me jump in here really quick.
And where is it held?
So that will be at the Ogden Eccles Conference Center. Give me one moment here while I hijack this computer.
It's actually my second favorite.
Oh my gosh.
So, in my bookmarks.
Best news of the day. So it's utahafterschool.org. We just finished revamping our entire website just this year. And so we have a lot of new resources on there. We try to make it a lot more friendly for you to navigate and to find everything that you need. And so if you come in here, sorry, it's always fun getting used to someone else's notes really quickly, huh? All right, so as you start out, we just have a number of different resources along the top here. The first tab, Program Resources, we have a calendar and events. This is actually where you'll see all of our professional learning events as they come up and everything. I don't know what we have in this right now because it's still pretty early. There's a USU Coding for Educators conference that's coming up, and the Program Information Form deadline, which I may have mentioned, and different things along those lines. And we do have dates and information about the Jumpstart 2019 conference that is here as well. So you can track that down. Other resources that we have available here, as I mentioned, we have a searchable resource library. So you can come in here, and we're still revamping this just slightly to make sure that all of the areas that are available on this are very clear and everything. So basically on this, you can come in, you can find health and wellness resources. So then our resource library brought up all of our health and wellness resources that we have available here. You can also type in keywords to look for things. So if you want to look for prevention or music or anything along those lines, you can type that in here and we'll add it and it will come up, hopefully. If you get in and if you notice that there's something that's out of date, we're checking this often, but if you find a resource that doesn't work, just let us know. And again, if there's something that you become aware of, let us know because we want to make sure that we have as much information in this as we can. Information on starting an after-school program, funding opportunities. This is a newer page that talks about grant and funding opportunities for you. We also have a job board, which I know a number of you have utilized, so you can post your positions here. Around quality improvement, I'll show you this section really quickly here. So this is where all of the information on our quality tool is, our program information form, as well as information on how to achieve high quality after school programming. We have a lot of different resources and research that are available on our website as well. And things like that. There's a find a program map. So this is important that all the information that we receive in our program information form is accurate as well. That is information that we use to populate our find a program map so that parents and partners can jump on and just type in their city or their area code and it will bring up an after school program in their area. So those are a few of the things that we have available on our website right now. We have a blog that's live right now that we're putting a lot of effort into right now as well to just help to drive you towards additional resources and things like that and all kinds of information. So that's there and it's available for you to use as you like, utahafterschool.org.
So just to be clear, those funding sources that you said we could, that is different.
That is separate than USBE.
From the 21st century.
Yep, and a lot of the federal funds that you apply for do ask that you have a sustainability plan in place, and that usually includes looking for other funding sources and things along those lines. So that's something that UAN hasn't done a great job in the past of making available to providers and having a robust list of funding opportunities for you, but that's something that we're trying to improve upon. So definitely take advantage of that. If I were to
click there, would I find deadlines for that?
Yeah, there are a number of different grants. It basically has a description of the fund, and then I think that it probably has a deadline in there as well as to when it's due. Great. No problem at all. All right, and so that brings us to the last of my stuff. Are there any additional questions about UAN and the work that we do? Great, thank you all for your time. It's always a pleasure.
I think that it is a good time to take a 10-minute break to use the restroom, make a phone call. So we will come back at 11:30. Again, there's no bathrooms on this floor. We are in the basement level or the main floor, the first floor. You'll have to take the elevators up to the second floor. We have some, if you need, concessions. We have a break room with some vending machines. So we'll come back and start at 11:30. The break room.
There we go.
I know, that looks pretty sharp, eh?
Over the years, to just see constant steady progression, more and more, better and better.
Hey, we'll achieve nirvana and after school, the world will be a better place for it. So. Yeah, thanks a lot. I always appreciate it, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They've done in the past, but now, because everything's stored in the cloud, the Apple ID, but that's a really, I would be like, yeah, no, you can't have my personal Apple ID. But then all of the data that's stored on the cloud.
Never had it.
Yes, so Apple ID, so if you're grounded, I think
So that you might want to check.
Yes, I will.
Okay. So that's why So, I mean, we are able to ask questions.
It doesn't have the same restrictions.
So what did they do?
That's why we're saying.
Not that we just use the USB.
We're going to talk about that. Because ultimately, to you,
data and I have done it, is like I'm taking
I used to have
go for too long.
Yes.
who's the approver until it's approved. Then it changes again.
We were actually kind of limit questions and we just want to make sure how that is with district.
But they would
Great, awesome. Well, I'll have to check that out.
Well, it's however it is how
hard way. I always go
That's awesome. That's so rad. Yeah, I played on the house do it last year.
So that's what 60 on, right?
It makes sense.
encourage you to meet and try to coordinate to our position. Just to make sure unique situation. Okay, I think that's it. Challenges. That's good news.
It's very restricted.
Honestly, it doesn't matter.
We don't fill out the PDF.
Like, it was like,
then the you really should fill out the form on.
no, you'll do it outside as a separate attachment.
Yeah, especially where.
Anyway, I love
You know what I mean?
Okay, so that's how you say quasi.
Yes.
You're not having this copy.
I'm doing great. And that's take the opportunity to say, I feel like my mom, my dad, and it's just such a mystery. I have no idea. Well, I know what you wanted to do. You know, it's like create
Upload the PDF.
lifestyle, like products.
Going into Utah grants.
My mom would have always been really interested in like, okay, so I have heard this for a while, blog and my website, and just me.
Seen her in a few days.
All that's going on.
Doing a little better, although it is just as all the time. She gets on both meds and she is.
Yeah. Ian, like, talk about when it was as we have this time.
How do I mix it up?
You know, it'll
All the bars just like
So because he's got very young kids.
Perspective on life, not worrying about that's it. I do more of our
Time Paul to kind of update the staff to get them at the 8:30 meeting and maybe a little videos about things. Hey, we've got to let people know. We've got canceling. Initially, we canceled.
I do that at least twice a year.
Oh yeah. Been back.
I mean, in the end, the root cause is nothing. They had to deal with
They told me, no, we got to take a chance. So I have heard that yesterday, and that's when I accepted.
yeah.
Hopefully.
I'm just saying, I might not be
For you, I might be a lot of work. Exactly.
I'm not sure.
Well, I have a.
Public
I'm not interested.
So we'll be able to make that an evaluation, I think, today. Pretty well. Well, and they know that we're.
Okay, we're gonna get started. We're gonna wrap up our
Super competitive.
our business conference here. So everybody can come to their seats and let's get started. So before we jump into the application documents and priority points and the process for submitting in Utah grants, just to review that, I want to go over some how to design your plan. I think any good grant application has a very strong needs assessment. We have limited funding. Unfortunately, I wish we could serve all the kids with this funding, but I know it takes a lot of other funding sources and maneuvering to serve the students. But really focusing in on your needs assessment, your target population is critical. So thinking about the design of your plan, the Southwest Educational Development Laboratory put out this practitioner's guide, which I encourage all of you to review as you're in this process of writing. I know there's other different after-school grants out there, so I think this is coming at a good time. I can send out the link for everyone who attended here today, but you can find it on CEDO's website. So it's all about quality after-school programs, building these systems to support after-school programs. So thinking about your needs assessment, you might already have some available resources at your disposal. If you're in a school or you're a community-based organization and you partner closely with a school, bring in teaching staff. Maybe someone who's only a part-time teacher or some highly qualified paraprofessionals, bring them in to help support that alignment with the school day. Obviously, teachers already have a huge job. So really reaching out to teachers who are interested in staying after, or maybe that they're helping you, 2 times a week, design your lesson plans for your staff who are actually going to run the program. So maybe they're at the level, not maybe directly working with students in the after-school programs, but really designing it so you have that alignment. So tap into your teaching staff, physical space. Maybe there's some empty classrooms, or the gym is often a place after school programs. So what kind of physical space do you have? What's the landscape of local businesses? Do they want to help support students with both financial support as well as in-kind contributions? Maybe Whole Foods would want to support your after-school snack program, or some other local businesses. Just connecting with them, going in to try to offset the cost of that. So who are your local businesses? Look for other local services for available contracts. Maybe you want to have your focus is prevention. So you want to contract out with your local health department to bring in some really robust prevention curriculum, training, whatever it is to infuse into your program. So look for those kind of contracts. Justice, social services, local recreation programs, local colleges and universities. This is a great source of volunteers. Students who might need to have some student learning credits, and they can do that by being a volunteer in your after-school program. Obviously, they would need training and background checks, but that's another area to tap into, and maybe even building a partnership with your local college or university so you have that ready group of volunteers available. Also, your district adult education programs, we talked about that. That's one of the focuses of this federal funding, is connecting to create those learning opportunities for parents and families. So connecting with your adult education programs, your district programs that serve English learners, that serve Title I, student advocacy service, connect with all of those to see if they have, they're doing similar programs and that you want to have one combined plan. So definitely connect into those resources, and then look for local volunteer sources would be senior centers, secondary or college students, and parents if they're available. Often we know parents aren't available to help in after-school programs because they're working or they have other commitments, but you might have some parents who want to be consistent volunteers. So look in the community and the schools you're serving to see if you have any of those parents. And then just 4 areas to focus on would be program organization. So how is your program organized? Do you have that proper administrative oversight? Are you connected with whoever, if you're a school district or charter school, who your business administrator is, knowing that you have to make that connection because they have to submit the reimbursement? So do you have a line of communication? Because we can have after school programs, but we eventually all have to get paid. So do you have a structure that can support that so it's not falling on one person? Often after school, staff members wear many hats, but spreading that out and really delegating those responsibilities and creating okay, who do I need to go to if I'm at a school district or charter school about reimbursements, or if I'm a community-based organization and I'm very small, what can we put in place so we're not overwhelmed? What other partnerships in the community can I connect? So if I have a lot of high staff turnover, I could possibly partner with this other after-school serving organization to maybe get some temporary staff, whatever that is. So think about that program organization. It is a best practice to have a full-time site coordinator, but we know that is not always possible. So what other resources can you bring in if you can't have that full-time site coordinator to oversee all aspects of the program? So considering program organization, academic programming practices, how are you aligning and connecting with the school day? Even if you're in a school-based program or a community-based program, do you know who the principal is? Do you know who the teachers are? Have you made those connections? Do they know about all the positive benefits of after-school program and how you can work together to better support those students and families? So connecting with that, getting the teachers to share their lesson plans if they want to. So when you're designing your after-school program, your staff have access to those lesson plans and they know the pacing and they know about these resources. So it's a very aligned program with the school day, not replicating what they're doing in the school day, but complementing and aligning is very critical. Having supportive relationships and partnerships. So it takes time to build those relationships. You might just not immediately have, with your local school district, you might not immediately have that relationship, but taking time to build that and show them what you want to do, maybe showing them your program plan. These are our outcomes. This is how we want to support you. This is how it's going to work best for all of our students and families if we partner together. So building supportive relationships with school districts, community-based organizations. I've seen a lot of positive partnerships between community-based organizations and school districts to develop an after-school system. So consider that, and then program outcomes. So as you're writing the application, we can't unfortunately have these huge monumental changing all of these student outcomes. We have to start a little bit at a time. It's not gonna happen overnight. It takes quality programs. It takes aligning systems. So when you're writing these outcomes, be realistic. What can we do in this span of time? What data do we have access to? What could we do? So yes, it would be great if we could change every single outcome for students, but we have to really zero in on what specifically, what is our theory of action? What is our theory of change? What do we want to focus on? Because you can't just focus on everything. You really have to zero into what you're focusing on with outcomes. Do we have the data? Do we have the staff to collect that? What story do we want to tell? Who's our target population? So thinking about all of these things as you're building your application and developing a plan that's realistic, but still supporting those students and families who need it most based on whatever community you're in. Because an after-school program in Price, Utah looks very different from one in Ogden, Utah. So think about those differences and what your community needs. Just some other resources. We talked about the CETL resource. There's some different program resources on the Federal 21st Century website you can check out. U4Youth is an excellent resource for staff training, to pull from different lesson plans, so check that out. That's funded through the Department of Education, and then Utah After School Network has an immense amount of resources. So now we're going to review the application documents. And I just wanted to be clear with the submission of your application documents. So you have received in your email all of the application documents. There's a PDF form fill with all of the application questions, and then there was a Excel form that is a gap analysis. So you'll need to, from that email, download those to your computer and make sure you save them on your computer, and that's what you'll start filling in, and that's what you'll eventually upload to Utah Grants. So you won't be answering those application questions in Utah Grants. It will be a separate application document that you'll need to download, save. Don't start filling out your application question PDF form fill in the browser, because it won't save all of your stuff, and when you go back to it, it'll all be gone. So make sure you're downloading that to your computer, and you'll upload those as separate attachments. You'll also upload your priority point information as well into the system. And then the only thing you'll be doing in the system is your budget and budget narrative. So this is a submission checklist. So we talked about you'll have your grant budget completed in Utah Grants. The grant application questions will be a PDF form fill that you will save to your computer and fill out and then upload. The same thing with the Excel form for the gap analysis. You'll have your partnership letters from the principals, the district, and whatever district or schools you're serving with this funding. So that's part of the application. You'll have your absolute priority documentation. So make sure you have that. You can use the October survey for that data, just verifying that you are at that required rate. And then for priority point documentation, you can, we'll go over that in more detail, but you'll need to upload that as well. And just as a reminder, in addition to comprehensive student and improvement school and targeted support and improvement school as a priority point, you'll also, Utah State identified turnaround school. So those who are, you have a list of those in your packet. So that's it. That's another option for that priority point. It's not a separate priority point, but it fits within those schools. So just a note. So you all have your application in front of you. It is due in June in Utah Grants. So make sure you go through all of the program assurances. Those are all the different requirements of the grant. Review those. Make sure your school district, charter school, community-based organization leadership know about this grant and the requirements with that grant. So please go through that information. They'll be They'll be signing in the system because you'll do that official submission, so that will be their signature. And often with school districts and charter schools, it's the business administrator who's that final approver for Utah grants. And we need to know some organization contact information. So, you know, if you're funded with the grant, who do I contact to tell them this great news? So we need contact information. That's helpful for us to have so we know who's overseeing the program, who we need to contact. We also ask for some program site information. This gives us an idea of your schedule, the population that you're serving at that program site. This is also where you'll put your program fee information. If you do charge program fees, just a brief summary. And then you'll have this section for partnerships. So these are your 6 key partnerships. So whatever your 6 key partnerships are, briefly describe that. There's also a partnership narrative question, but this just gives us a good summary of who those people are, how they're supporting the program. Everyone needs to consult with the private schools in their area. So if those students who are attending those private schools in the area that you're serving, they will need to be served by this funding. Then you need to work that out with whatever private schools are in the area. If there's not any, you can write that, but we need to have everyone fill out this form. It's important that we're serving all students who can be served in the area. So make sure you go through that private school consultation.
Are those only for private schools that meet the absolute priority?
Yes.
Say that again.
So private schools who are at 40% or more poverty level. Is that correct, Sandy? Yes.
And what are we, in the area, what does that mean, like in the area? Are we talking like a 1 to 2 mile radius? Like, do we have any kind of guidance on what that is?
Depends on where in the district, because they're usually done by district boundaries. So if you're within, say, Weber District, it's whatever schools are within that boundary of that district. If you're in Salt Lake District, then it's whoever's in Salt Lake District. So district boundaries are your key.
So if we're like a private,
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It depends on where you're located. So if you are, let's say that you're a community-based program, but you're in West Valley. So whatever school district is in your area, that's the boundaries you go by.
Okay.
Okay?
So it's not the individual school, it's the whole school district?
This whole school district.
In the past, charter schools were not restricted to that because of.
In this case, it's different because you're now with the boundaries of the school district.
But charter schools, because they can draw from all school districts, in the past were not held accountable to this. So the last.
For this grant.
It is now.
You are accountable for those in your district. Yes.
So if you're serving particular school
Because
sites
we're now
in the
accountable to
district,
it, so.
are you just required to contact private schools within the boundary of those schools?
That would be the easiest. Within the boundaries of the schools.
Yeah, right.
But you're gonna be serving.
Right.
Yes.
So, just a clarification, but if you're in a district area, like with charter schools, that becomes that little different
We
kind
will,
of thing. Unless you're partnering with the school.
Can you restate? There's a lot of chatter,
yes.
sorry.
So as long as you are consulting with so if you're gonna serve, 2 program sites and they're both schools, whatever within the boundaries of that school, you need to contact any charter schools, private schools, whatever it is.
Sorry, to clarify one, you just said the boundaries of the specific school, so.
Yes, we are clarifying what we had said
So it's not
previously.
district now.
It is schools.
Schools.
Okay,
Charter
but-
schools, that's their district, because they don't have boundaries.
If you're a CBO, is what she's saying.
Yes, you still need to do that if you're a community-based organization.
Because you have to partner with the
So
school.
we gotta do the full cycle.
We will write this up because I think it's a little confusing right now. So it's always been the boundaries of the school.
It has not changed.
So it hasn't changed, but we'll write this up so it's more clear. How does that sound? For community-based organizations, for charter schools and districts. point is that you're reaching out to those in your community, and that is documented here. So,
Camille, are we just checking with schools that have the 40% poverty?
yes.
We believe?
Yes. We will clarify that point. Private school consultation is always a good question.
Sorry, I have a question about the partnerships really quick. Are you required to have all 6 partnerships?
No, you're not required.
Are you required to have the private school consultation prior to submitting the application?
Yes, that you have at least reached out to them via phone or email. Maybe it's an ongoing discussion, but it has to be that prior consultation.
Clarification, will you also clarify private versus charter? Because
Yes.
I thought that if you're a school district, you didn't have to consult the charter schools.
Yes, we will clarify that. Thank you. So moving on, another aspect of the application is making sure you are connecting with whoever your local education agency is. So this is going to look a little different for charter schools. But making sure you're, even within your own charter school, you're connecting with the appropriate program. So maybe early childhood or adult ed within your charter school. So how you're going to make those connections so after school isn't operating in a silo. So, and if you are, how you would fit into the other federal title programs as well. So this isn't scored. This is just information we need to have. It also could start a good conversation for you around how you're partnering with school districts, if you're a charter school, those people within your own charter school who you might not normally work with. So absolute priority, this is where you would list your programs, what their poverty rate would be. We do require that documentation. So please, if we need to have that documentation submitted, make sure that's an attachment in Utah Grants. So for competitive priorities, what we're titling competitive priorities, this first group, it's that the applicant organization meets these requirements. And all competitive priorities are 3 points each. So that the program plan is submitted by both a school district or at least one public or private eligible community organization. So that you're partnering with different, if you're a community-based organization, that you're partnering with an LEA, a charter school, whatever it is that you're partnering. And then the second one is that the program plan was developed in coordination with interagency of community councils, adult and community education, community-based organizations, parents, students, so the community knows that you're applying for this funding and you're moving forward and you might potentially have this funding in the community. So, and we ask that you write a brief, that is your documentation, right? And you write in the question just exactly how that works. And then additionally, if the applicant organization has never been awarded a 21st Century grant, then you get 3 points. If you were not awarded last year, you get 3 points as well. So if you are new to applying and you've never applied before, you could get up to 6 points. So you can get both of those points. The second section of competitive priorities, this is that all proposed programs meet these sites. So this isn't the baseline requirement. This is kind of going above and beyond because these are competitive priority points. So that the program will operate 15 hours during the week, 36 weeks during the school year. You'll identify a temporary site if the main site becomes unavailable. That's all of the sites you need to meet. So if you're gonna apply for 5 program sites, all 5 of them need to meet these competitive priority points. And then that you have a plan for.
Camille, excuse me.
Yes.
Does the 36 weeks include summer?
No, it would be school year.
School year.
Mm-hmm. Good clarification. So the other one is that you have a plan for a licensed teacher to supervise the program. We talked about how important it is that connecting with your school district or charter school to make sure you have that alignment with the school day. So you need to have a teacher in a supervisory role. We need to have documentation for that, how that will work. So that's all the sites. And then all the sites will offer a healthy snack. That doesn't require documentation. I encourage all of you to try to connect with Child Nutrition if you are eligible to get reimbursement. Snacks and dinners can eat into your program budget pretty quickly, so try to get that those resources for getting reimbursement. So then these are competitive priorities that just apply at least one of the program sites if you're applying for multiple program sites. So you have in your packet a list of comprehensive support and improvement schools. It looks like this. And then targeted support and improvement school. You have those lists. So
on the TSI school list, I think you're missing a page because Ogden School District is listed nowhere.
okay, we will send out the link to that.
Perfect.
So if you are on any of these lists, Utah State identified school turnaround, you are eligible for this priority point. And I would really encourage you, if you are going to serve schools that are undergoing this process, either school improvement, so the CSI and TSI, or school turnaround, that you connect with the people who are overseeing that so you have an aligned plan. They know about after school, they know the positive benefits of after school programming, and you're all working towards the same goals and outcomes. So really aligning your application and the different things you're doing with that plan. And we will send these out. They are available on our website, but I will send you the links to where to find them. We did have some frantic printing on Friday, so we'll get that taken care of. Additionally, if you are operating one program site in a rural community, you can get a priority point. It is the list, so there's that blue and green list that has the different, what is identified as rural, but if you feel strongly that the program you're serving is rural and is not represented, that community is not represented on this list, you can submit additional documentation that the review committee will take into consideration for that rural priority point.
Type of documentation do you use?
If you wanted to bring in some census information, other kinds of statistics, maybe from that the school has done a study, some kind of documentation that you feel the review committee could use to give you the priority points. We also need documentation. You're going to serve, if you're serving a high number of youth from refugee background, we need documentation for that. That could be a letter from the school, from the executive director, whoever it is. I do caution you with both the absolute priority point documentation and the serving students from refugee backgrounds. We don't need any personally identifiable information. So please be careful as you're sending that in. I know people really want to get those priority points. It's important to them. I totally understand that. But make sure you're redacting information, or if you're unsure, give me a call and we can talk through it. We don't ever want to have the case where we have that sensitive information. So please be sure to redact, or if you have a question about it, let me know. So another priority point is that you're serving at least one program site that is on the list with an intergenerational poverty rate of 10% or more. It does include some sites that are maybe just right on the cusp of 10%. Those can be included. So if your school is on the list, then you can get that priority point. I did print it out, but I would definitely go to the website where you can find it. So you can do a Control F and find it, but it's just for your reference. It comes from that report. Another priority point for one of your program sites is that you're serving teen youth from either middle schools, junior high, or high school, as well as serving youth who are pre-K or kindergarten students. Any questions about priority points? Great. So walking through the application, you have your needs assessment. This is where you're really going to make the case for the funding. What am I going to do with this funding? What gap is this funding going to fill? So you're going to be talking about that. Some background of the students and families you'll be serving and just laying the foundation for your grant. Then you'll talk about your project design, What are your goals and outcomes? How are you going to achieve your program goals? What evidence-based practices you'll be utilizing? What is your evaluation plan? So this is another big part of the grant application. Principles of effectiveness. So how are the programs going to meet the needs of the students? You know, when you're selecting the activities, are these really the kinds of activities the students need? How are you going to collect the data needed to make sure your program is effective? So that's this question. Program evaluation. You are required to do periodic evaluation, and it's something that we encourage you to have both internal and external, if possible, so partnering with a local school, college, or university to do that. Maybe a graduate student can help with that, because it's always good to have that external eye. I know a lot of current grantees work with local colleges or universities to do that, so just consider that as you're going through this process and building your application and considering that into your budget. Evaluation can be costly, but are there some partnerships you can utilize to reduce that cost? Academic achievement, how are you going to support and align with the school day and designing your program, your programming activities? Social emotional learning, program components. So you're selecting 2 from this list that you feel are the most needed for your students. It's going to be a little bit different for everyone. You're using some kind of evidence-based framework, curriculum. It doesn't have to have gone, as we talked about in the beginning, you can use a framework. So you're pulling from other evidence-based resources and you're building your own. You can also utilize that.
If you have multiple sites, do you have to pick, do they have to use the same components at all of the sites?
No, you can say we need, for maybe you're doing a high school, so you want to focus more on education and career readiness, or college and career readiness and financial literacy. So as long as you're making that clear and that it's really intentional. Inclusion. So how are you going to include all students in the program? How are you going to include students who might have different levels of ability in the program? We want all students served no matter what. So how will you work with the school district, the family, obviously following all of the privacy laws, but getting them the services they need. So no student, that's never a barrier to accessing the program. Family engagement. So how are you going to engage your families? I would push you to go further than family nights, although those are an important aspect. What other things could you do in terms of family engagement? What do they really need? I think family nights are, of course, a great fun opportunity and one part of family engagement. But what other things are you doing? We talked a lot about connecting those families with adult education resources or your local community education. How can you provide them those services for those families who need it? Partnership commitment, so this should align with your form around your 6 key partners. The timeline is important, being realistic with the funding. We will do our very best to get that award letter initiated in Utah Grants by the first week of July. But if that doesn't happen, maybe building in some buffer room for that. I know often many community-based organizations, as well as school district charter schools, can't start until they have that award letter, so we are going to do our best to get it, but maybe build in some buffer time with your timeline, just in case. Travel and safety, so it's important to have those procedures. We talked about safety being the foundation of quality, so what are those procedures and policies you have in place? How do you train staff around those things? So you're doing your earthquake drills, fire drills, things like that. That everyone has the training, so when these things happen, when emergencies happen, everyone knows what to do and where to go, and that the parents know about that as well. Staff know, the students know, so it's not a scary thing. They know, okay, when this happens, this is what we need to do for our fire drill. And if possible, aligning with what they do in the school day, if you are in a school-based site. Program continuation and management. So it takes a lot to run after-school programs. You might wear a lot of hats in your role as a grant administrator or a site coordinator. So having a strong plan and walking through it, making sure it's realistic, that you have everyone in place, that you've coordinated with the people you need to coordinate with to make the program run. Professional development. We talked earlier about how important it is to have staff well-trained, to be able to grow professionally. So all staff who work 10 hours or more need to receive a minimum of 25 hours or more of training, professional development for each year of the grant. So there's a lot of different resources with that. There's Utah After School Network, your local district or charter school may have some other resources, but that you're getting quality professional development, because that's what's going to lead to better outcomes for students and families. Margaret?
If our staff includes certified teachers who are trained by the district, that counts?
Yes, they can count that applicable training.
Do you have documentation when you do site visits for that?
Yes, so part of the monitoring will include some going over that information. So if you have logs, if you want to have them submit, every 6 months, whatever that looks like for you. Good question. Continuation, this is where you would talk about your sustainability plan. How are you going to bring in other partnerships or other resources knowing that the grant will reduce in years 4 and 5? How are you going to still maintain that same level of services? Or is there anyone you could help you offset that? Or at the district level, your community-based organization level, what does that look like? Sustainability is often a dirty word, but we have to start talking about it. We want to build systems. So when grant funding, there's never a guarantee in grant funding. Competitive grants, there's never a guarantee. So we always, as organizations, need to have a plan for, okay, if we don't get this grant funding or something catastrophic happens at the Department of Education and we can't have this funding anymore, what are we going to do? Taking a look at these sometimes scary questions. Budget. So with the budget, you'll write your narrative piece here. You'll also do as an additional attachment the gap analysis to show why you need this funding, what you're going to be using the funding for. You'll talk about this here, and then in the Utah grant system, you will use, you'll input your budget line items as well as your budget narrative there, like the itemization of your budget. So for salaries, this is how we came up with our total for salaries. This is how we came up with our total for supplies. And I will caution you, as you're developing your grant budgets, it's very easy, I think, with after-school programs to cross over into the line of entertainment. So we need to be careful with that and ensure that all of these activities that we're doing are connected back to some kind of academic component. So we are, for current grantees, we are in the process of reviewing documentation. I've seen a lot of different entertainment charges come up. So if you think it's on that line of entertainment, please let me know before you go ahead and maybe charge that to the grant. So being careful with entertainment. How can it tie back to educational purposes? Courtney, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up. Marianne, who's on our team that's watching on YouTube, she was just wanting to make sure on all these, you said you download it from your website?
So it's in the email.
Okay, so in the email that was sent, you download it from there onto your computers, fill it out, and then you're gonna upload that into the...
And eventually when we open it in Utah Grants, you can download it from there as well. But in the meantime, so everyone can review the application, start getting your data together.
And that's that email that you had rubric included in it?
That was, I think, 2 weeks back. So I will send out all the application documents again.
Okay.
So everyone has them.
Because it probably came to me, but since she's not working,
Yes.
I want to be able to forward it on. Okay, thank you.
Budget always brings up so many questions, Ken.
I was just wondering if the final documents will have character limit descriptions on each page.
It won't say what the character limit is, it just is what is in the box. So when the box runs out, you're done.
So just to clarify, you were just saying, we'll have a budget narrative in this PDF application, but then when we fill out the budget in Utah Grants, we repeat the same information, it's
No.
just a quick synopsis.
So what you'll have in here is more of you know, these are the other, this is how it's gonna look, we're gonna spend most of this on salaries, professional, whatever it is. For this site, we need more salaries because we don't have this grant here. But in Utah Grants is where you'll want to have your itemized budget narrative. So this is how we got to the total with salaries. This is how we got the total of line items. This is how we got to the total of supply items. So, and the grant review committee will have both, but they should all be in alignment.
Important for us to show on this that we are, like, do you want to know about the stuff that won't be funded by this as well? Like, do you want to see where we're already
So
investing?
we would want to see in your gap analysis what that looks like.
And not so much in the narrative.
So when you say what is not funded, is that like as an organization?
Yeah, like the stuff we're already paying for. Like,
You
is
can
it-
speak to that in the budget narrative question in the application PDF form, Phil. Any other, I saw a lot of hands go up. Sandy, do you want to add anything about this topic of budgets?
Couple of things that you ought to know. Number one, don't charge anything to your budget you haven't explained in your narrative. Okay? So if suddenly you decide that you want more computers or something like that, you know, did you explain why in your narrative? Did you make sure that everybody understands what you're gonna use that for? We had an application a while back that was suddenly gonna put new locks on an old building, but never talked about it in the narrative, but it was suddenly in the budget. What is that for? Why do you need it? What's the difference? So don't put anything in the budget that you have not talked about in your narrative. And if you have any questions about anything that you're putting in your budget, give us a call. We can talk you through it. We can help you say, yes, that's an allowable expense, or no, that's not an allowable expense. You are supposed to do healthy snacks for your children. If you're not eligible for the child nutrition stuff, then make sure they're healthy snacks. You know, if I get a reimbursement request that's all candy and gummy bears, and I'm not going to approve that. Okay, so make sure that what you do fits in with the grant. Okay, salaries go, benefits go, you know about that. Professional technical services are either bringing in people for special projects, like maybe you have somebody coming in one day a week to do art classes and you're paying them separately. They're not a regular person, they make around or something like that. Then that should be in professional services that you're purchasing for that one project. There's a line in there, and I can't ever remember what they're called, but there's one where it says about supplies stuff or certain professional technical services. There's one in there where you could put your cell phones, where you can put things like if you are having somebody come in and fix computers or something, fixing your electrical stuff. That can be put in there. Yes?
Sandra, I'm wondering if when you're writing the grant, you're not sure that you're gonna need some of these things. So later on, we find we do we just send you something that says, hey, can you do an
if you're
addendum
gonna
to
change
that?
your budget in any way, then you need to get it pre-approved. So if you find that you put something somewhere that you don't need it, but you need it somewhere else, make sure you let Camille know what you're doing and why, and have her approval to do that before you just automatically do it. Yes?
Is there like a little bit of a guideline for a list of what has been requested in the past?
Yeah.
Some sort of guidelines?
Yeah, we'll put something together if you need something. We can. We can do that. Equipment, under equipment now is only those items that cost $5,000 or more each for one item. Other than that, you put it in supplies and materials. But remember, anything that you spend on equipment like computers, calculators, those kinds of things have to also be labeled. This is bought with Title IV money. Okay, they do have to be labeled, you do have to keep an inventory of them. You don't have to put in an inventory for books. You don't have to have in your inventory tables and chairs. You don't have to have in your inventory bookcases. It's only those things that are limited use. Okay? Computers, those kinds of things. But be sure that if you're going to charge them, you've told us why. Make sure that that's in there. On your reimbursement request, you will be asked to turn in your general ledger. If we have questions about your general ledger, we're going to ask you for more detail. So you need to keep in mind all of your receipts, everything have to be there. So if we ask for them, you can do it. The other thing that you will have to do is turn in a time and effort documentation for all of the people that are being paid out of these funds. Because they're federal funds, they have to be documented. And I think we can send out everything that needs to be on there, but it's like you've got to have your name of your person. You've got to have their job title. What are they doing for you? You've got to have the certification dates from what time to what time. The minimum, or excuse me, the maximum amount you can do is 6 months. You can't do it more than 6 months. You can't do it for the whole year. So at least every 6 months, it's got to say how many hours they worked or what percentage of their time that they worked in each of these sections. Okay? It's got to show 100% of their time and effort. Okay? So make sure that you do that. And again, it needs to be signed and dated by both the employee and the supervisor. Now, there are cases where a lot of schools and districts now have electronic. So if you have an electronic one, send it in, let us look at it and make sure it's approvable. So those are okay too. Otherwise, they have to be signed, they have to be in the file, and they have to be sent if we ask for them. Okay, any other questions? Any questions about budget or reimbursements, feel free to call me. I will walk you through things, tell you exactly where it needs to be in your budget. So let me know if you need help.
So is your information anywhere in this material you've handed out, Camille?
I can send it out. But do you want to give them your phone
It's
number?
my phone number. My direct phone number is 801-538-7844. And my email is just like Camille's, only it's sandra.grant@schools.utah.gov.
On the timesheets, if we use indirect costs, do we need to include timesheets of the admin people that are being billed in the
No,
grant?
not for indirect costs. It's only for the employees that are getting salaried from your grant. Okay. Other questions?
Sandy's awesome. I've talked to her voice for years. I've never seen your face.
Sandy is awesome. So we just liked, as a prospective applicant, to give you an idea of what the process will look like. Many of you might already be in the Utah grants, but there are some specific requirements for this grant. So time and effort is another thing, is something that is very important. So keep those in mind. Again, if you have questions, let us know. Be very careful with those entertainment costs. We have somewhat of a breakdown of what goes in each line item. It is being updated by our financial operations, but we can send out a draft of what they have as a resource for you.
Also, if you're going to do any field trips that are overnight, make sure they are pre-approved or you will not get repaid.
So things to consider, and of course we allow for budget revisions. We know programs are fluid, and so budget revisions are all done in the Utah grant system. If you want to give me a heads up that something is going down, there's a place for you to write in. I like it because it's in the system. It doesn't get lost in my email, but there is a place in Utah grants for budget revision if you do become a grantee. So additionally, another part of the application that is scored is this project plan. This gives me a summary, the readers, everyone, your program goals, outcome, what evidence-based practices, including curriculum or framework that you're working from to provide and develop these services, What's your data collection plan? And how are you gonna share these program successes with the key stakeholders in your community? And then please refer back to these state goals and performance indicators. They're there for a reason. Make sure as you're going through your application that you're referring to these, reviewing these so that you're building your program around these different indicators, which align with the federal focus areas. Additionally, you'll be required to do a gap analysis. So this really gives the grant review committee an idea of what are the different funding sources you have that were for this school year, what's ending for next school year. So is there going to be a gap left because maybe you didn't get a different after school program grant, or there's been a reduction in the Title I funds you were being utilized for after school. So talk about that, talk about the gap. This is where you can really speak to your targeted plan for supporting students.
Do we include private funding in this as well?
Yes, any kind of donations, private funding that's going to support these specific, if it's a one after school program or a group of after school programs. It's good to see what that looks like, making the case for how this funding will fit in with that plan.
This is where your fees can be put in also.
Yes. Well, that is the application process. Please review it, dive into it. I will make those clarifications around private school consultations. I know that is one area where we're always learning more, so I will follow up on that. Also follow up on getting you access to the direct link to the CSI and TSI schools. And just email me with any other questions or concerns that you might have. And thanks for coming.
So one of the things we were saying, and we're doing right now. Like the Southwest, showing the side by side again.
Yeah, we haven't accounted for it, but yeah, I agree.
How is the thing I have to check
Right.
So, okay, it could be that we both are allowed to.
Keep us in the loop and let us know, and we'll do the same. Yes.
Immediate local.